Hey everybody, Mr. Farrell here. I'm going to make a quick video that's going to introduce our next chapter. And our next chapter is about probability and chance. At least that's the first part of it. Now, let's review just real quick. We know how to multiply these two binomials. And one way to do it is just make sure that you multiply everything times everything, right? Make sure that everything gets multiplied by everything. And then we add them all up later. But we've used an area model, which is really convenient for a lot of different things. So if we do it a different way, and on the test, lots of people got this one right for the Chapter 2 test. So if we just line them up like this, say x plus 2 and x plus 3, we multiply them like it's an area of this rectangle. So if we go x times x, we get x squared. X times 3 gives us 3x over here, and then x times 2 is 2x over here, and 2 times 3 is 6. And then we take all the stuff that's the same, and we would get, let's get some stuff out of the way here. Like I said, if we add up all the stuff that's the same, like right here, these two are the same, so that's going to be 5x. So our final answer is going to be, it might look like this, that x plus 3 times x plus 2 is equal to x squared plus 5x plus 6. So now we've represented this as a product and a sum, and that's kind of what I was looking for on the test, to make it look like that. Here's the product and here's the sum. Anyway, I did that quick review because we're going to use that in our next chapter. Okay, hold on a second. So here's one of our simplest probability models, and that's flipping a coin. It's used in sporting events all the time to make decisions, and everybody agrees on it. Well, let's take a look at this mathematically. Flipping a coin, one way to look at it would be like this. You have two options, either heads or tails, and this is for our first coin. So you half our heads and half our tails. If you flipped a coin repeatedly thousands of times, that's what you would see, is that half of the time it would be heads and half would be tails. Pretty easy. Seems pretty fair. Okay, for two outcomes. Now what if you had two coins that you were going to flip? Okay, let's get this out of the way. And if you have two coins that you're going to flip, let's make an area model. So we'll call this, we'll draw a diagram like this. And we'll say that this is coin 1, your first coin, and this is your second coin. Okay, so you toss one and then you toss the second one and look at the outcome. So the outcome, again, is 50% are going to be heads and 50% tails. Heads and tails. So we'll say this is 1/2 heads and 1/2 tails. And those are the probabilities of each of those happening. So if we flip our first coin right here, and then our second coin, so let's see, the options are, on our first coin, we either get a heads on the first and heads on the second, or we could have heads and then tails, or the first coin could be tails first and then heads, or tails and tails. Let's see what all of those options turn out to be. Well, if we multiply, like we do in the area model, 1/2 times a half is, half times a half is a quarter, 1/4. And if we want to say, well, what's the probability that it is tails first and then heads, 1/2 1 half is a quarter. And then if it's heads and then tails, instead of tails and then heads, it's also a quarter, and this is also 1/4. Now notice, this is going to be important. All of these add up to, guess what? 1. Because you have to have every different possibility adding up to 1 total. Okay, so there's an area model. What if we wanted to look at 3 coins? Well, that becomes a little bit trickier, and I think it's easier to use a tree diagram, which is what this is. This is kind of like a mini tree diagram. And let me show you what that looks like. So we'll do this. We'll start out here, and we'll say this is coin 1. Okay? This is coin 1, and it's going to be heads or tails. So coin 1. I'll call this C1, coin 1. And then, for each situation, if it's heads, now you flip your second coin, and that can also be heads or tails. And this is coin 2. So the first one was heads, first heads, and then heads or heads and tails. Same thing on this one. If we throw the coin and we get tails, and then we have an option over here, the second outcome could be heads or tails. So that's just like the area model we just did. Same thing as this one over here. Okay? But now we're going to add a third coin. So we're going to do this. We're going to say this is C3, and you can have a third outcome. Heads or tails. Heads or tails. Heads or tails. Heads or tails. Okay. Now, what if you wanted to say, so we have all these different outcomes here. There's a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different outcomes for 3 coins. Now, what if you wanted to say, well, what's the probability that I toss 3 coins, one after another, and I get all heads? Well, let me follow this. So, heads, heads, heads. And each of those probabilities was equal. It was 1/2 each. So, of course, this is 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. And that means that the outcome will be 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, which would be 1/8. Okay, so there's a 1/8 chance that I would get heads, heads, heads. So if I flipped a coin 8 times, I would expect that I would get heads 3 times in a row, just once out of those 8 times. And I think I should just stop right there, because this is just an introduction to our next chapter. So remember, we're going to be working with tree diagrams and area models, and that's going to give you a big head start on our first lesson of this chapter. Okay, I hope you watched. I hope you get something out of this, and I will see you next week. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye.